Good morning, everybody. In this video, we're going to show you in Samsara how to assign any unassigned driving that you may have. Those unassigned segments, unassigned driving, I'm going to show you the best way to get those assigned by your region. So when you're at your overview screen here, you're going to come down on the left to your compliance tab. And this is the tab that I feel that everybody should always start their day with, always come to this compliance dashboard. This is where you're going to see any drivers that you have in violation right now are always going to be at the top. And this maybe doesn't necessarily mean that they're in violation at this moment. It just means that they've had violation time during this cycle. So before they've had a 34-hour restart, there has been at least one day or one event in there that's put them in violation. Okay, so if you wanted to check that out, you would just click on this, the driver's name, go down to View Log Details, and you would scroll down and find the day that they had the violation. You can see over here on the right, he said a 14-hour day shift duty limit violation. Okay. And you could open that up and expand it. And you can see here, he's probably been in violation because at this 8:13 mark, that vehicle moved. Okay, 8:13 in the morning. And he's a night driver. So he probably stayed signed into that tablet, into that Samsara device, still connected to that truck. And then the shop had to move it for some reason, or another driver had to use it for a second or something, but because he was signed in, it automatically threw that drive time onto his log. Okay, that's why it is so important that every driver is signed out every time at the end of their shift. You always have to get off duty and leave the vehicle. Okay, but for this video, we're talking about assigning the unassigned driving. So we'll get into those violations in our next video. But for now, those of you guys that are curious about assigning your driving and cleaning up some of those unassigned segments, unassigned driving, this is where you would do it. So your compliance tab, compliance dashboard, and I'm just going to pick a location here. Okay, we'll go with the central location. And you could click on this View Details, Unassigned Hours of Service Report. I could star it as my favorite if I wanted to, so that it always showed up here in my favorites. Or I can get to it this way through my compliance dashboard. And you can see all the different unassigned segments that I have here, unassigned time. So you're just going to start at the top of the list. You're going to click on it to open it, and it's going to show you. Now, don't be alarmed. Some of you guys have these, such as the central region, just because the devices were installed before your driver started using it. So we just have a little cleanup to do here, and then it should be good going forward. But you would select for 5069 truck number for the date here, October 31st through November 8th. All these different, you got to look at the time. You know, and if you knew who was driving it, or if you knew that it was a mechanic move, you know, you're going to select it, or possibly select all. You know, you click up here, select all 16 events. And if you knew who the driver was on that day, you would assign the selected. It's going to pop up your box, and you're going to pick the driver that you want to from this drop-down menu. Or you could type in the driver's name. Okay. Now, I personally don't know who was driving this vehicle, so I'm not going to do that, because it will put all this driving time on that driver's log that you assign it to. It will go back and change their logs. Okay. So please be 100% certain that if you assign this to a driver, you knew that that was the driver that was in it. Now, if you knew that this truck was in the shop, or if one of these, you know, if we went down here and we said we knew that on Halloween You know, at 3:34 p.m., this truck was actually in the shop, and that was the mechanic that was driving it. I've got that one selected, and I could annotate it. And then it's going to ask you for the reason that you're annotating this. And I could say, you know, that this was a mechanic move. Okay? And if I hit save there, it's going to save that one segment that I selected as a mechanic move. Okay? And you're just going to go right on down the list, so on and so on, cleaning this up. Most of you guys have drivers that typically drive the same truck every day. You know, you knew that they were in 3053 tank wagon on November 4th and November 3rd. You could assign all these back to the driver that was in that tank wagon on that day. Like I said, this list may seem a little overwhelming at first, but once we get this cleaned up initially, it's not going to be a problem for you guys to stay on top of it. But it is something that we have to stay on top of. We have to keep cleaned up and do a good job of making sure that all these are always 100% managed. Unassigned segments, same thing. It's considering these segments, annotated segments, pending segments, no different. It's all drive time, unassigned time, same thing. Once you clean those up on the unassigned driving, you're going to see where it cleans this list up on the segments as well. Okay, so that's how we would assign any unassigned driving time, on-duty time, anytime that vehicle moves. Like we said, it's never okay to drive one of these vehicles without being signed in. Now that we've all been trained on it, we all know how to use it. We all have the apps on our phone in case the tablet didn't work for some reason. There's no reason that a driver should be moving a vehicle without being signed in. Typically, it's going to be a mechanic move, or, you know, the truck's over at Freightliner, or, you know, whatever the case may be. We'll go ahead and clean those up. So you should see in the future very few of these events. And honestly, it's unnecessary work for you guys. So make sure you're having your drivers do what they're supposed to be doing. Make sure they're signed into the system. Make sure they're getting the job done. Okay? Let me know if you have any questions.